So let's just press the button and see what happens. And we'll press this button and see what happens. Oh my goodness, I forgot my other glasses. They are somewhere. Are they behind me? Okay, so good morning. I'm a little later than usual, just a tad bit. And I want to welcome you to this day. Oh my gosh. Welcome to this day. I will tell you honestly, I have just been caught up. Um, I know that when it's time for me to do this, I that is what I ought to be about. And I was swimming in the vibration of somebody else's energy this morning, listening to a poet talk about the art of poetry, and I got caught up. I got caught up. As a matter of fact, it made me want to look for my anthology of black poets that I have around here somewhere in here, and share a poem. That was what I was listening to. Somebody who was dancing down through poetic history. And I will tell you that when I was in college, I took a black literature class, black lit, and I was exposed to poetry that I had never heard. And I've talked about Dr. Clark, who was the professor of that particular class, and the impact that he had on me and my education. Um, for the better, for the better. And but quite a interesting and poignant, I'll call it that, use that word, impact on me and my life and my voice, finding my own voice, because I think it was him that helped me to speak up, to show up, to stand up, and really embrace that. Maybe I need to look for Dr. Clark so I could reminisce and thank him for his assist on that. It may not have been what do I want to say about that? It may not have been. At the time, it was rather contentious. At the time, it was very emotional. If you remember that story, and I don't know how long ago I told that story, but it was a very emotional coming out for me in finding my voice. And so I wonder if I could find him. That is really interesting. Another one of my professors that was powerfully impactful for me was Neil Holmes. Neil Holmes. Anyway, I've been in contact with him over the last couple of years, and am so grateful to see that though he's retired, he moved. I don't know if he ended up at Brown or at some other university college teaching, but he is still active, but more so active with different things. So the last time I think I made contact with him was when, in reference to black farmers, and how they're trying to, there was this thing of, I don't want to say out of Africa, this moving out of Africa. But there, with the great migration of blacks out of the South, many of us, even though it was a part of our own cultural piece, many people left farming behind, and there is now this resurgence, especially now when you talk about organic, and there's this resurgence of black farmers that are coming to the fore. As a matter of fact, I do believe I'm in one of the black farmers groups on here on Facebook, but really talking about our relationship with the land and to our food. And so, when I think about the numbers of people that had an impact on my development and finding my own voice, is really interesting. All African People's Revolutionary Party, who I studied with for some years while I was in college, also, I do believe his name was Carl, and Deborah, really instrumental in helping me find and shape, even though it wasn't them who shaped my voice. Sometimes it was the resistance to them that helped me to clarify and shape who I was. And so, if you give some thought to that, I believe in the power of speaking names, um, what do I want to say? The word is, when I talk about this, speaking names, it's as if there is a stirring up of something. And so yesterday, I think I mentioned that as long as you remember someone, if you remember them or the impact that that they have had on your life, they continue to live through the engagement or the impact that they've had on you. So this invoking a name to me is powerful, even if I know that they are still on this side of the veil. I mean, I know that to some degree. I know that Neil is still around and kicking, but there are so many that to be able to invoke their names and what it was that they brought to you, what it is that they stirred up in you, is, I think, powerful. And one of the other things that I know is when I talk about this idea of how spirit talks to me, I see images or hear stories or something from individuals, people, whoever it is, and it kind of takes me back to. And so I think to myself, what's the message of this visitation, if you could call it that? What's the message of the visitation? And so when I think about like the Neil Holmes, I remember that it was because of my not only attending his classes but being in relation to him, because beyond the classwork, there was also this this whole political piece that was being addressed. And I had the opportunity to meet Kwame Nkrumah, who I think many call Stokely Carmichael, from out of that era. When he came to town, actually went from did, I don't want to call it a tour, but he came into town, and we were at Akron U when I initially met him, and he told me that that he wasn't going to call me by my, what he called my slave name. He says, I'm going to call you Nzinga. I'm going to call you Nzinga. And so I was like, what is, and that was how I really, my hero, was Queen Nzinga, because it was him who told me about her and her history. And so I totally embrace that. And it is interesting to think about, because of Neil, I was exposed to him, and because of him, I was exposed to a number of other people, whether they are here in Cleveland or whether they are in Akron or at Kent State, and had an opportunity to attend a lot of things at Kent State because it was the time in which the people like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was making her rounds, and the impact of her, of what she brought to the table. And Naeem Akbar was another one that I used to travel to Kent State and see. And all of these people, kind of what happens as we listen to people and are exposed to different ideas and different thoughts. It helps. What my hope is it helps to texturalize, to give texture and body to what it is that you think or you believe. And so as you give some thought to those things that have shaped you, even if it is coming on here, when you listen to me, sometimes it is the resistance to what I'm saying that also has this ability to give shape to what you believe. Sometimes you might be in total agreement with me and think like, oh, she's got a point there. But sometimes it may be that girl is like, you can determine what it is that you think and believe. And sometimes, hopefully, you'll also find resonance in your own awareness, your relationship to nature, and this tactile thing. Like, okay, she's always talking about gardening. What is it to this? And what happens if I go out and I stick my, a shovel in the ground? What is it that lives beneath the surface that I might not even see? Or do I believe that it's just dirt? Or that dirt is not alive and living, or whatever it is, what is it that you think and believe? So it becomes this through the conversation, you can begin to ask yourself questions. And I think in the last week or so, I've mentioned that, I used to be troubled when I went out to speak, and people might look like they go off in a zone, or even I haven't had anybody really that fell asleep on me, but sometimes, especially when I was on the radio late at night, people would always talk about how it would cause them to go to sleep, but sleep is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes our bodies and our minds on a conscious level can't receive what it is that we're hearing because we're not ready. But our subconscious, if you fall asleep, it's your subconscious is still receiving that. And so the process, don't underestimate the process of how we learn and how we grow. So if I, sometimes people talk about things that are triggering, right? That might trigger somebody in the way that they perceive the world. And if you cannot handle it, it is perfectly natural for you to just, I got to tune out of that, right? And so in that, you never know what it is that is then cultivated. When I talk about this idea of planting seeds, if I'm a seed planter, the initial seed may not be one that is received, willingly, or, with this feeling of welcome. But once it begins to take root and grow, then you can then see how it has changed. So in my college days, there needed to be this coming of age, because there was a part of me that and I'm just trying to give you guys my truth. There was a part of me when I first went to college that went into, for the very first time, an institution where I was surrounded by people who didn't look like me. While there was a presence, a black presence on the campus, it was not a large one. And so I had a struggle a lot of times with, these people were acting, when I did see my folks, there was a certain level of, why can't you guys just assimilate? Why can't you get on the boat? Why can't you speak in this kind of way or act in this kind of way? Why do you still have to, you know, be running around and acting out? There was a part of me that was in judgment about the ways in which we expressed culturally. There was also a part of me that was on a predominantly white campus. Well, I don't even have to say white campus. It's just a campus, right? Because unless it's a HBCU, that it's a predominantly white campus without even having to say those words. And so there was a part of me that had the notion that because I was there, that somehow this was better or superior to, and HBCU might be inferior to. At the time, I did not know the stark differences in what I would receive had I been had I had the opportunity to go to an HBCU. So, that too was a bumping up against the walls of what I knew. I was constantly, and so I'm so thankful and grateful for, to be able to say that I had people on that campus who were supportive of not only me and my education, but were like sewing into me that entire time. So if you think about in your lifetime this idea of the people who have helped shape your thinking, whether it was them doing it knowingly and willingly, or because they were pruning you in a way that is, and when you think about pruning, I mean it in just that way. Pruning in and of itself is uncomfortable. And so this notion that someone gives shape and purpose to your life through the process of pruning, pruning is good. Just like we know, a lot of things, cutting your hair is good for your hair. It's good for the growth process. When you prune a plant, you cut it back, and it helps it in its trajectory of growth. And a lot of times we don't like it. I will tell you, we don't like it, but it ends up being for the better. And so we have to figure out how, in the midst of things, how to trust the process that's at work. To trust the process, because a lot of times what we do, thank you God, is that in our judging of things, right, whatever that may mean, you can look at and say, oh, I don't like the way that my mother, treated me. That's not my truth, right? My mother was my mother. Or my father was my father. There was a lot of things that were not as I desired, right? I mean, I could have, who knows how it could have been different. But the fact of the matter is that I got exactly who I needed to help shape me into the person that I am. And in spite of all my judgments about it, I am who I am. as a result of the interactions and the relationships that I have. And so I think that at a certain point in our lives, there is this, hopefully there is an understanding or an awareness. People do the best that they can with what they know at the time, with the light that they have to see by at the time. And so if that is the case, and you recognize this, at a certain point you give up the struggle against it and become thankful for it. So I am grateful. I'm grateful, so grateful for all of those who have sown into my life in very different ways. So I want to read for you this the daily daily guides from Out of the Science of Mind magazine. And then once I do that, then I could continue talking. Y'all, it just life is so magical. It's so magical. And if you are not seeing the magic, it may be because you're maybe not looking, or maybe it's you already surmise that you know what everything looks like, and you've been here and you've done this. I mean, I come on here today and I can't even remember or recall how many dozens of times I've said it's Saturday or it's Friday or it's Monday. It just seems like this, this constant thing of me announcing, and I could say that each day for me is, I don't know from your perspective. From your perspective, I might be repeating myself. Oh, she just said this on Monday. She then said that on Tuesday. You might take it any kind of way. You might, whatever. You might have an idea about it. But for me, when I come in here, it feels new every time. It just does. So I'm just doing what I do. So blessings, whatever that may mean to you. I'm just making it do what it do. So yeah. But I want you, if nothing else, if you don't get anything out of what I've said so far, I want you to, just give some consideration. Good morning, Twyla, darling. How are you? I want you to give some consideration to the things, the troubles, the hurts, the pains, the things that didn't always go along with what you were thinking, the things that you judge. Think about them in a way of how they may have shaped you or helped you form who you are today. And and then be able to give thanks for that, right? Whatever that might mean. Just being able to be thankful for how the resistance to something, the pruning process, may also have been for your highest and best good, because it's helped you along the way. So let me read what Raymond Anderson wrote for today, and then I'll pick up on the other side of this. I get excited because it's Raymond that is writing these, and so I'm so grateful. His writing for today is called Open at the Top and Bottom. Open at the Top and Bottom. And his first quote comes from Walt Disney Company. And it says, "We keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths." And so from Ernest Holmes' Discover a Richer Life, the quote is, "Science of Mind will never be a closed book, but it will continue to gather spiritual truth from every source and every person's experience. That is beautiful and good. One of the things that I think I talked about on February 1st was I talked about this idea of new thought and what it was. And one of the things that I know I love about this idea of new thought is that there is a certain level of openness to it. I don't know what would happen to me and my ability to share if I was to go into a situation where people told me the parameters of thought, like, okay, in this you can only use the Bible, or you could only use A Course in Miracles, or you could only use the Science of Mind textbook. If somebody was to give me those parameters, I think that quite naturally my personality is one that would resist. But because there is an openness to this, like we're not vilifying anything, when it comes down to this. We're not sitting there saying, oh, all of this is evil and only this is good. It is like, how do we embrace all that is out there and understand it through a new lens? And that is what breathes life into everything for me. It is that I get to talk about nature and how I see that and how it shapes me. I get to talk about A Course in Miracles, Science of Mind, Unity teachings. I get to talk about mythology and philosophy and whatever else there is. So if it's poetry, let's bring it to the table and see how that fits. And if it is hypnosis, let's bring that to the table. If it's ancestral stuff, let's bring that to the table. Let's bring it to the table and sort of look at it, and without demonizing anything, without trying to make it seem like this is better or that's better. And sometimes that, I think, is the mistake that a lot of times we make in our churches is we want to make it seem like God is this, but not all of that. Right? Or I tell you, it irks me the way that people will say, well, they're a Christian, or they're a Jew, or they're a Muslim or something, as if there is something like, what does that mean? Does it mean that now I can't be in relationship or have a conversation? Are you crazy? I mean, that becomes one of those things where we get it confused. What you're trying to keep out is the very thing that you need for your growth and your survival. So this idea of being inclusive is just so good to me. Let me read what Raymond wrote. I done went all off on my tangent on this, and I get to read what Raymond wrote. Raymond says here, like a tree whose branches reach upward to the light of the sun and whose roots grow deep into the dark soil, we are called to be open, anchored, aligned, and rooted in a practice of divine presence. Curiosity ensures that we are exactly that. Curiosity calls us to ask us how we apply this teaching to the various ills of the world today. Take, for example, the monumental task of launching astronaut John Glenn into orbit. Because of the talent and genius of Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson applying their knowledge and their skills to the task at hand, the launch succeeded. They did not simply theorize, rather they materialized applicable scientific truth to the task NASA gave them. We are applying the science of mind. We are applying the science of mind with such commitment, consistency, are we applying the science of mind with such commitment, consistency, and conviction? Have we allowed the comforts and complacency of being the best kept secret to prevent us from showing up as we could? If we say we are open at the top, do the fruits we bear say otherwise? What are we, individually and collectively, called to do differently? The world is like a hospital, a place of vast conditions, illnesses, and disease. What is our spiritual imperative as metaphysicians when we enter into this hospital? Metaphysician, heal thyself is not meant to stop with us. Rather, it begins with us. And then, as Yahshua said to them, go and tell all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. We too must teach and demonstrate principles in all creation. Ready? The affirmation is, I exemplify being open at the top and at the bottom. I am anchored and aligned with principle and presence. Good, good, good. I love the way that he is, reiterating this point of this curiosity. It's also interesting to me. It's also interesting to me. I will tell you places where I get a hiccup, right? When sometimes when I hear, there's a guy who is on my Facebook feed, and his ideas and estimations about the world are always from a very dark place. He talks about as if there is this collective experience that people have. And it's so interesting because when I talk to you guys, I am always telling you about this joy that I feel, right? Whether it is, whatever it is, there is this joy that undergirds how I move through the world. So sure, I have my days when things, this is part of my drama. When I go to a car wash that I'm paying a monthly fee for, and they're consistently closed, and I'm saying to them, I want my money back, and I'm saying it in no uncertain terms. It's not that joy is not present. It's that I need to bring the full force of my attitude at you so that get your stuff together or give me my money back, right? It doesn't negate, one doesn't negate the other. It means that, my Valia said to me one time, she was talking about, she had, whatever the situation was, it landed her in a holding cell. She was, I don't know if it was a traffic stop or whatever, but it landed her in a holding cell. And she said she got in there, and she said that she was walking around through that cell. She was praying up a storm. Jesus this and Jesus that. She said she was praying in the thing, and she said she was praying out loud, and she was crying, and she was just like going through and talking to Jesus and having this conversation about Jesus. I know I did this and I know I did this, but if you deliver me from this, right? She was going through all her stuff. And she says that this woman that was sitting there finally said, would you shut the F up? And Valley say, I looked over at her, and she said, Jesus, wait a minute, I'm going to be right back. She said, now you gotta know my little sister Valia. She can get loud on you in a heart. No, she already loud. She walk in the room loud. So if you if you think about people and their decimal points, like the range that their voice, her natural place is like at an 8, right? It's at an 8. If you're on a scale from 1 to 10, she naturally resides at about an 8. And she said that woman told her to shut the F up. And she said, I told Jesus, hold up, wait right there. I'll be right back. And she said she had to read that woman's obituary right quick. At the same time, making sure that she didn't catch another case while she was in there. But she was like, people don't know me. She said, I thought I could see it because that is so her. And so a lot of times what we do is we talk about things as if there is this, there's this cut and dry without realizing that there's both and. So the yin and the yang symbol, if you remember, there's a white side with a little black dot in it, and there's a black side with a little white dot in it. Meaning that it's no real demarcation. It is both and. And so when I read a statement like life is like a hospital, I'm thinking to myself, no, life is like it is, and we have hospitals in them. But the experience of everybody is not that we need to be triaged and decided at what level we are in or at the hospital. Some people might be, doctors. Some people might be working in the cleaning staff. Some people might be working in the kitchen, and some people are there in the beds or some level of sickness. But there's some of us that ain't even that. I don't want to entertain that because that's over there, right? I'm not even ready to get on the same street as the hospital, right? So it's, while I love the metaphors, it is also just, thinking, it's also thinking about where we put our energy and what we give our attention to. I said to somebody the other day, I said, it's my idea. I know that people are inherently good. And of course, now I got to bring up, people's names or, just like in this, to start naming names on people who have done something that is, different or contrary to. And I was like thinking to myself, the fact that you can name exceptions to the rule says that it's not the rule, right? So if you can, for me, if I'm saying that I know people are basically good, I'm not looking at it and saying, but let me find for you the ones who don't fit into that. When you find somebody that doesn't fit into that, let's look beyond what it is that showed up so that we can talk about why that showed up, right? Why the anomaly is there. It's not the truth. So I try, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Don't it feel good? Hey! And so we all have had some things, trauma, drama, things in our life that have colored our perception, right? It could have been that your mother was, your mother, God bless our mothers, right? Because what happens a lot of times is that they don't get classes on how to, on all of this stuff, like what's going to impact them, what's going to have resonance later on. They don't, and for the most part, people think I don't know. I don't know. I truly, this is not a definitive answer, because I'm saying to you that this is my observation, right? Um, a lot of times people don't recognize the impact of what they do on you later on. They don't see that it might be something that um, makes you always subservient, or puts you in a victim role, or that it could be something that makes you always feel like you are um, struggling for position or attention, or never receiving the love that you think that you deserve, or the connectedness that you want. They don't see that. Not, we grew up in a world that says, not to pick the baby up when it's crying, because that was the what happened to us during our enslavement, right? That people didn't have the ability to coddle, or to sit with, or to hold, or embrace their own child. And so as a result, there has been a disconnect, and people didn't learn these things down the line. This anxiety you feel, sometimes it comes out of those of not getting what you need, enough attention, enough love, enough forgiveness or acceptance, or whatever it could be. It could be the conditions under which we live, because this thing called poverty is and it doesn't matter. You might say, oh, I didn't live in poverty, or I didn't live under this, but it doesn't necessarily matter if the environment is one that is based on that limited resources, or the struggle for resources. A lot of times what we do is life is about this struggle all the time. I listened to or read a piece by this guy yesterday. I want to tell you what his name is. But it seems to be escaping me at the moment. That was really good in talking about the struggle over resources, and the things that were going on that made this thing of the struggle around race valuable, or a tool for capitalism to use up against each other. So this idea that people exist in with limited resources and struggling for stuff, it creates a kind of a mindset. And so if I can make you like talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if I can get you confounded by those first couple of levels of need, right? Which means food, clothing, and shelter. If I can make that problematic for you, I don't have to worry about you looking at or questioning the rest of the stuff. That is something that people do in their leisure. That's maybe one of those reasons why after a certain age, or when you get to a certain age, you have the luxury of sitting back and watching drama unfold and thinking nothing of it, because you've always had drama in your life. And so when your drama ceases, because maybe you're retired, now all of a sudden we got all these news programs that keep you engaged in something to create this enemy that you're looking at, instead of really the real people who are pulling the puppet strings that you are operating under. I don't know. All of this stuff is quite possible, and maybe not, right? So there is a part of us that finds our voice through the things that we endure. So if it is our struggle in our families, with our parents, with our siblings, um, the framework of how we were raised. And you guys will, one of the things that I keep thinking about to myself is that there was a time in the great before where we had a different perception about what was right and what was wrong. There was a time at which, as a woman, I wouldn't have had a voice. I would not be able to use my voice in the way that I do, because I might have been considered a witch back in the day and burned at the stake for even trying to have a voice and engage in this kind of exchange or conversation. Um, there was a time, and I could see that there was a time at which, whether woman or black, I wouldn't have had the ability to have this kind of a voice, or this kind. There are so many things that have been, and now that we know something different, they are different. I mean, you can imagine that there was a time when even something that we now find so egregious, like incest, was acceptable. Good morning, Sandra. I just looked down and saw that you said good morning. So good morning. But that, there was a time, right? There was all of these things, and as we learned different and started to do different, then what was acceptable and unacceptable even changes. So it's beautiful when we can look at our lives and see that various things have shaped the way we see the world, and then be able to, whether it was in a way that was helpful or in a way that was painful, to be thankful for what we have gone through. And to understand that sometimes, we apply nefarious causes to certain things. They did this because they didn't like me, or they did this because they were jealous, or they did this because they was trying to pull me down, or they did this because. Wonder if we were generous with our estimations and stop taking this, all of the things that have happened to us as malicious. And I know some of you won't be able to embrace that. Some of you will think, yeah, my parents were just cold, heartless, out to do damage, or out to get me, or whatever it is, to silence me, to marginalize me. Some of you will have that notion, but wonder if that they were just giving you what they learned, and it was in their DNA, that there wasn't a conscious choice to be the people that they were, but rather since it was what they learned, there is a loyalty to what you're learning, even when you don't agree with it. I can recall thinking to myself at one point that I wasn't going to be like my mama. There was a part of me that was like, yeah, I'm not doing that, right? But then when you look around and you see yourself doing things that your mother would have done, or saying things that your mother would have said, it's, now I get to stop and look at it and say, oh, I get where that may have come from. And really, then once I get where it may have come from and understood it from her perspective, then I get to see if I want to, keep that, or if I want to work to erase it. And we all get to make those choices and those options. Hopefully, you're making them for yourself. There will be people who will try to keep pulling you back, pulling you back, pulling you back to what you've always done. But there is also still that part of you that can make and choose for yourself, who it is that you so desire to be. My mother, there was, um when I was younger, my mom and dad, at first, we were they would have parties at night. um the kids all go to bed by a certain time, y'all got to go to bed, blah blah blah. And then we would hear the music come on, Motown music or something like that, and their friends would come over, and they would, entertain. They would have, I don't know if it was a card party, or because we were supposed to be in bed, we were supposed to be asleep, but it would be just like they would host these little house parties. And not a whole lot of people, maybe 10, 12 people. I don't know. We were in the bed. But they would be in there, and they would, just having a good time. What, you know, young parents do at the time. And it would be interesting because there was a certain part, I think, just like everybody else, who you didn't understand or know about your parents, because your parents were your parents. They weren't the cool people, right? They weren't, um, they just parents. And and yeah, and so we got a lot of the music that we heard, and a lot of the stuff that we would hear as we drifted off to sleep was based on those kind of things. I also remember that they stopped hosting parties, and it was because of some jealousy that went on. I don't know if it was somebody dancing with somebody, or some money or something like that, but it turned into a big clash between my parents. And I remember that I think that was probably the last time that they hosted one of those parties at the house. But it it didn't necessarily, I don't know, I don't know, I don't exactly remember all of that stuff back then, but it was an interesting time. And I think it was an interesting time, um, as children, to get that awareness of what, that your parents had a life or an existence outside of you. And people see that in different ways. I'm sure that there were some people hmm, who were the babysitters, and then other people who had those opportunities. But just to kind of think about the awareness coming in that you are not the center of their world, um, is really an interesting, perception. And then it gives you this idea too that you had, I'm trying to think of how old my parents must have been, like in their 20s when they started having children. And then what did that look like? What it is it this, like people say, there is this relinquishment of um your own stuff, like no longer do you have control over your time, or even your own interests, because everything becomes about the life that you are building with your children. And so your songs are no longer Motown, but maybe now, um, you know, kid stuff. I don't know. But all those things are things that we can take into consideration and see, you know, see our parents from a different perspective than just being whatever your my ideology or whatever your thought system is. How do we back up? How do we back up off of what we've always thought and allow the generosity of reflection to show them as different people, and then to be able to forgive and release them? So if you have money, if you have issues around relationships, to look at those through the lens of your parents and maybe revisit where you are now and if it's working for you. If you have issues around money, think about your parents' issues with money and how those might influence what you think about it and what you maybe want to keep or release. If you have issues around job and work ethic, what were your parents around job and work ethic and all of that stuff? Is it working for you? Is there something that you might want to change or something you might want to keep? It could be what you saw. I think that I was deeply influenced by neighbors as well as by my parents. It's being able to sit in energy around whatever you have issues with, right? I even am amazed constantly about people and their ideas and issues around food. You know, the ways in which people can know things are not good for them, but yet and still can't make another decision to do something different because of what they have been raised on. Whether it's food or whether it's exercise or even how you see yourself, right? Whether it's sex or your body image, your level of what do I want to call it, bashfulness, or things about exposure and being seen. A lot of those comes out of the relationships or the perceptions that we received from our parents and then from their parents, and so on and so on and so on, right? So just revisiting these ideas, I think, is a powerful thing. Just, and I'm not trying to tell you you need to spend 30 minutes talking about it or thinking about it or anything like that, but just to revisit an idea or a thought. Just bring it to mind and just evaluate and see if it's something that you want to keep or something that you want to release. I tell you, all of this is, for me, to me, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. It's this introspection that is an amazing opportunity that each of us has to look at ourselves in different and sometimes new ways. Yeah, just to consider what is it that what's the shape? What's your voice? That's all. All right, y'all. It's I gotta go. I get to go because I have another meeting coming up, and I am wishing you an amazing Saturday. I hope that it's supposed to warm up today, and so I hope that you get to do something awesome and amazing. I gotta do some work and figure out this car wash. All right, so blessings to you. I'm so glad Tawila and Sandra was here. Whoever else was here too, welcome to you. I am wishing you an amazing, amazing weekend. I will be on at 1 o'clock tomorrow. 1 o'clock. Don't look for me in the morning. I'm gonna stay up late tonight so that I can get up leisurely in the morning and make me some maybe I'll make some waffles. Because I'll actually, yeah. So, yeah, enjoy your morning. I'll see you at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And on Monday, I will be here at 8, 8:15. All right. So, have an amazing day. All right. Love you.